Hey everyone, today's standard size card is going to be made using Stampin' Up! And Basic Gray supplies. This very vanilla cardstock is 8.5 by 5.5 and I've scored it here at 4 1/4, just using my bone folder. The stamp set that I'm using is by Basic Gray. It was a free stamp set that I got as part of a qualifying order from Two Peas in a Bucket. And I'm going to be using the cherry tree, the little bowl of cherries, and the sentiment that says life is a bowl full of cherries. It's my first stamp set from Basic Gray that I've used, so first time I'm trying it out, so we're just kind of seeing what happens here. I'm just mounting that on an acrylic block, and I'm going to be coloring it in using markers. I'm using chocolate chip, old olive, and rose red. And when I started coloring it, I realized that the ink from the marker was beading on the stamp. So I wiped it off and and then I applied some Versamark to it to try to give it a little bit of tooth, and then I'm trying again. I've done this with regular stamping with acrylic stamps to try to get a little bit better adhesion, and it usually works. So I'm just coloring it in with the marker, and it worked out pretty well. I did notice, though, that after a few swipes with the marker, that it would seem to clog up. I would lose my color. So you can see I'm scribbling a lot on my paper because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't ruining my markers and that I was getting some decent flow from the color. So I'm just huffing on the stamp set there to reactivate the ink. You can kind of see some of the fogginess on the acrylic block. And there we go. It turned out pretty good. You know, it's not the most crisp image, but it's kind of almost a watercolor effect. It's kind of pretty. Now I'm just coloring in with the markers on the little bowl of cherries, and because that stamp was so was a more fine line, the ink didn't bead as much as it did on the tree, so I didn't have to worry about the Versamark. I just went over with a marker to fill in the cherries, and then I re-outlined the leaves, and now I'm just scribbled on an acrylic block with the olive, and now I'm picking up that color with a blender pen to fill in the leaves and the bowl of cherries. And there I am, just scribbling that off. Now I'm going to go ahead and adhere that piece to some old olive. That vanilla cardstock is 2 1/4 by 3 inches, and then the olive piece is 2 1/2 by 3 1/4. And I'm just tacking that down. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and stamp the sentiment. I stamped it in olive, but I wanted to highlight the word cherries on the stamp. So I went over it with a baby wipe to clean that word off, and now I'm just coloring that word in with a rose red marker. So it gives it a nice highlight. This stamp is way too detailed and small to try to do that with 2 different color ink pads. So using a baby wipe to clean it off and then a marker is great. That little vanilla piece is 1 1/2 by 1 inches, and now I'm mounting it on an olive piece, which is 1 3/4 by 1 1/4. And I'm just going to sponge the edges of that vanilla card with some old olive. The pattern paper that I'm using just looked like it was floating around a little too much without some color behind it, so that's why I'm adding the olive cardstock. And Basic Gray papers tend to look a little distressed, so I thought about maybe brayering it and, you know, a couple different techniques, but I just finally decided that it would look better with kind of a rough swipe with a sponge, and it looks really pretty. The pattern paper that I'm using, that cherry piece, is 4 3/4 by 3 1/2, and then the red piece is 4 inches by 2 3/4, and they're both from the Basic Gray Lemonade collection. Now I'm just popping up the tree with some dimensionals just to give it a little bit extra depth, and just lining that up. And I'll end up doing the same thing with the little sentiment as well. So there you go. You can see I'm just going ahead and adding my dimensionals there. One last little fun touch. I'm using some Tombow Mono adhesive on the cherries, and just adding a little tiny touch of glue so that I can put some glitter on it. This is ultra fine glitter from Stampin' Up. This is part of their Cosmo collection, I believe, and there are 5 different pots of glitter that come with it. This is the rose red glitter. There's a ton of it. I'll never end up using it. I should have used an embossing buddy and I didn't. But anyway, that once it dries, I'll clean it off a little bit better. But that's the card. You can use crystal effects if you want to pop those cherries up in a different way. But that pretty much finishes it up. I hope you like the card. See ya!